My name is Amelia Torres. I am 31 years old, a financial advisor based in Austin, Texas, and, until 2 days ago, I thought loyalty counted for something in my family. I thought years of sacrifice, showing up, saving their asses over and over, might actually mean something more than a pat on the head or a silent nod of approval. I was wrong. So painfully, predictably wrong. I was standing in my kitchen making coffee like it was just another Thursday when the doorbell rang. It wasn't a neighbor or a package, nope. It was a courier dressed like he was delivering bad news in bulk. He handed me a manila envelope, asked me to sign, and was gone before I could even blink. The return address read, David Torres and Sons Construction Group. My father's company. My name was printed clean and neat underneath. I wish I could say I was surprised. But I wasn't. You learn to stop expecting softness when you grow up in a family that treats affection like a currency you have to earn. One good grade at a time, one perfect behavior at a time, one sacrifice after another. Still, nothing prepared me for what was inside. Amelia. In light of recent developments and ongoing disagreements, it's become clear you no longer align with the values of this family. Please do not attend the upcoming Torres family reunion. We are officially cutting ties. David Torres. There was black and white. My father didn't even have the backbone to call. He sent a letter like he was firing an employee. And not just any letter. A letter from a man I once bailed out of $1.5 million in debt. See, 2 years ago when COVID hit and construction projects across Texas froze up, his company was hemorrhaging money. Layoffs, debt, lawsuits, you name it. He called me, voice strained but still proud. Told me they were done unless someone stepped in. And who stepped in? Me. The daughter who had never been his favorite. The one he told to focus on softer careers, while Nathan, my golden boy brother, was groomed to be his second coming. The one who paid her way through college because she didn't want to burden the family. I didn't co-sign that loan because I trusted him. I did it because I believed that family meant something. That maybe, just maybe, helping him keep his company afloat would finally earn me something resembling respect. Dad, I got this letter. I stared at the page for a full 5 minutes before setting it down. No tears. No anger. Just silence. Then I picked up my phone and typed one word. Understood. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. The silence was answer enough. That night I didn't sleep much. I poured myself a glass of wine, pulled out the original loan agreement, and read every single line of that 32-page document again. I'm a financial advisor. I know how to protect myself even while helping others. And somewhere around page 18 it all came back to me. Guarantor may withdraw from the agreement in the event of material misrepresentation, business misconduct, or operational fraud, pending independent audit. My father's business had more skeletons than drywall. Hell, I warned him about overbilling state contracts and fudging timesheets just months ago, and he shrugged it off like it was normal practice. All I needed now was a proper audit and a good lawyer. Funny how being cut off makes you remember what you're actually tied to. The next morning I met with my attorney, Lisa, an absolute hawk when it comes to financial loopholes. I slid her the envelope and loan papers over coffee. She scanned the letter, raised her brows. Wow. He really put this in writing. I nodded. He wanted it official. Fine. He'll get official. Lisa smirked. You sure you want to do this? Once your name's off that loan, the bank's gonna panic. I'm sure. Then let's start the engine. It felt surreal. Like I was watching someone else take control of the wheel I'd been gripping too tightly for too long. A version of me that had finally decided she didn't owe anyone anything just because she shared a last name. When I got back home that afternoon, I sat on my couch in silence. The kind of silence that usually only lives inside hospitals or courtrooms. I stared out the window and remembered the last reunion. It was in San Antonio at my Uncle Ramon's ranch. Everyone had matching t-shirts, red for men, yellow for women. Nathan got to give a speech about carrying the family legacy, while I was asked to help slice watermelon in the kitchen. My cousin Daniela, who dropped out of college and still lived at home, got more praise than I did. It wasn't just favoritism. It was a pattern, a system. One that rewarded obedience, submission, and pretending things were fine. But this time I got to decide what was fine. When Lisa filed the papers that officially began the process of removing me from the $1.5 million loan, a wave of relief washed over me. I didn't expect what came next. Exactly 24 hours later, my phone began to explode. 68 missed calls. 17 voicemails. One message from their accountant, Sarah. Amelia, I just got notified your guarantor status was revoked. The bank is freezing the credit line unless we find another backer in 72 hours. Please call me back. Please. I turned my phone face down on the table and laughed. Really laughed. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't cruel, I was just done. My father wanted to cut ties? Fine. I used those same scissors to cut the one rope holding his empire together. They didn't see me as part of the family. Just as a walking bank vault with a decent credit score. Now they'd have to figure out how to keep the house standing when the foundation walked away. Later that evening I listened to the voicemails. Just curiosity really. One was my brother Nathan. Hey Amelia, Dad didn't mean it like that. I think you're overreacting. Can you call Sarah and sort this out? We're in the middle of closing a deal. Delete. One from my mother in a soft, trembling voice. I wish you would have just let us explain, honey. You've always been so sensitive. Don't do anything rash, okay? Your father's just under pressure. Delete. And finally, hi father. Amelia. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this isn't the way to go about it. Family doesn't turn on family. We need to talk. That one. I saved. Not because it meant anything. But because it was the first time he admitted he needed me. I poured another glass of wine and turned off my phone for the night. For the first time I felt light. Not vindicated. Not angry. Just free. And maybe that was the real revenge. My phone stayed off for 3 days. Not because I was hiding. I just didn't care to listen anymore. After a lifetime of bending over backwards, it was strange, liberating even, to finally not give a damn. I used to break out in stress hives if my dad sent me a single word text. Now he could shout into the wind for all I cared. On the third morning I drove to a small cafe on South Congress and treated myself to a breakfast sandwich and black coffee. No distractions. No family drama. No fake apologies. Just the sound of jazz humming from the speakers and the clink of dishes in the background. It was peaceful. Then I saw her, Sarah, my dad's accountant. She was standing outside the cafe in a wrinkled blouse, tapping on her phone with the kind of speed that only came from panic. I caught her eye through the window and she froze. She knew exactly who I was. And she knew I had seen her. She walked in a moment later, adjusting her jacket like it would somehow hide the dread on her face. Amelia, she said, her voice too sweet, too forced. Can we talk? I took a slow sip of my coffee, then set it down gently. Sure, I said. But only if it's not about the loan. Her face twitched. Look, she began, sliding into the seat across from me without waiting for an invite. You have every right to feel hurt, I get it. What your dad did, hell, the way he worded that letter, it was cold. I told him it was a mistake. I tilted my head. You told him? Yes, she nodded eagerly. I told him cutting you out was risky. I mean, not just emotionally but legally. You're not just a daughter, Amelia. You're a financial keystone. Without your guarantee, the bank is, well, you know. You've probably already seen the impact. I leaned back in my seat. Nope. I've been offline. But I'm guessing it's not great. Not great, she echoed, biting her lip. They froze the credit line. Payroll bounced this morning. 2 clients pulled out of deals. Nathan's trying to secure a short-term loan, but, well, his credit is trash. That last part made me smirk. Why are you telling me all this? I asked. You didn't care what I thought 2 weeks ago when you were building projections for his so-called succession plan. Sarah flinched. It wasn't personal. I just do the numbers. Right, I said flatly. So now that your numbers are bleeding red, I'm important again? She looked down at her coffee. They're desperate. I didn't answer. Then quieter she added, your dad is different. I've never seen him like this. He hasn't slept. He keeps checking the front gate like you might show up and change your mind. He doesn't need to worry, I said. I'm not coming. Sarah finally looked me in the eyes, and for the first time I saw something that wasn't fear. It was guilt. Real guilt. The kind that doesn't show up in spreadsheets. You didn't deserve that letter, she whispered. I blinked. That caught me off guard more than anything. I could have unleashed all my bitterness then, called out every condescending remark, every family meeting where I was left off the invite list, Every time Nathan got the credit for my work behind the scenes. But I didn't. I stood up instead. Tell him I meant what I said. I understood. And I'm done. I left her sitting there, holding her half-empty mug like it could warm a house that was already on fire. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of me. I turned on my phone. The screen flooded with notifications. Missed calls, voicemails, text messages stacked like dominoes. But one name stood out. Uncle Luis. He was my father's older brother, retired but still sharp as a tack. He'd always treated me better than the others. Maybe because he didn't have daughters of his own, or maybe because he saw through the facade earlier than I did. His message was short. Your dad screwed up. Call me when you're ready. I hesitated. Then I called. He answered on the second ring. Amelia. He breathed like a sigh of relief. Thank God. Hi, Uncle Luis. I won't waste time, he said. I've been telling your dad for months he was pushing you too far. Cutting you out like that. That was stupid. He was trying to clean house before the merger. I sat up straighter. What merger? Luis paused as if realizing he'd said too much. Don't bullshit me, I said. They've been in talks with Interstate Development for weeks, he finally admitted. Your dad wanted to make the books look clean. No liabilities, no outside claims. Your name on the loan was a complication. My blood ran cold. So that's what this was. Not just rejection. Erasure. I wasn't just cut out of the reunion, I was being cut out of the future. Quietly removed before the big payday so I wouldn't have grounds to claim any of it. And co-signing that loan? That had put me too close to the center of the company. Too dangerous. So they planned to dump me before the deal closed? I asked, my voice sharp. I told him not to, Luis said, sounding exhausted. But he said it was business. That word. Business. As if I hadn't already been treated like a transaction my entire life. Thanks for telling me, I said. Really? He hesitated again. There's more. Of course there is. The buyer, Interstate, they won't go through with the merger unless the financials are stable. That means the loan. That means you. I smiled coldly. So I really was the foundation. You still are. When the call ended, I stared at the ceiling for a long time. They were drowning. They needed me to throw them a rope. But all I saw was the image of my father's signature at the bottom of that letter, telling me I was no longer one of them. All I felt was the silence of being excluded from every major decision, every plan, every conversation, because I didn't fit the mold they had carved out for their dynasty. I was done being useful. But I wasn't done being smart. I emailed Lisa and told her to initiate a full audit of the company. I had access to some internal files from my previous work with them, enough to trigger a review. If they were trying to sell, the truth would come out in discovery. By morning, Lisa had filed the paperwork. By noon, Nathan had sent me a message. What are you doing? You're going to destroy everything. And beneath it, another from my dad. We need to talk. Face to face. Please. I didn't reply. Instead, I booked a meeting with one of the regional bank officers who had approved the loan. I walked in with a binder full of documentation. Emails, discrepancies in invoices, red flags in supplier payments. I laid it out calmly, fact by fact. The officer's face fell more and more with each page. Why are you bringing this now? He asked. Because I'm no longer financially responsible for what comes next, I said. But you might be. That evening, I sat on my balcony, watching the sky turn pink over the Austin skyline. The calls had slowed. The texts had gone quiet. They were regrouping, plotting their next move, probably begging some desperate investor to step in and patch the hole. But I knew something they didn't. When you build your empire on loyalty you never earned, don't be surprised when the floor gives out beneath you. They thought cutting me out was clever. I had only just begun to cut back. And this time I wasn't just severing ties. I was pulling the rug. And I wasn't going to stop until they finally understood. You don't discard what you depend on. Not without consequences. Not without collapse. 3 days after the audit paperwork was filed, I got a call from Lisa while I was in the middle of grocery shopping, staring at a row of overpriced blueberries I had no intention of buying. Are you sitting down? She asked. No, I said, pushing the cart toward the frozen food aisle. But I'm standing next to some suspiciously expensive waffles. She didn't laugh. That's when I knew something had shifted. The bank initiated a freeze on all company-related accounts this morning, she said. Full hold. Not just the credit line, payroll, operational funds, vendor payouts. Everything. I blinked. That was fast. They didn't like what they saw. Your documents. Those supplier discrepancies? A few of those names don't exist in state records. It's not just poor accounting. It's fraud, Amelia. My chest didn't tighten. My stomach didn't twist. I just stared at the fog on the freezer door in front of me. Lisa, do you think they knew? She paused. Your dad? Nathan? Someone absolutely knew. Maybe not all of it, but enough to run it like a shell game. It's been unraveling slowly. You just yanked the last thread. I smiled faintly, eyes locked on my reflection in the freezer glass. Good. Word's already spreading, she continued. Vendors are pulling out. Interstate's deal is frozen pending internal review. They tried to erase me, I murmured, more to myself than to her. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me silenced. Well, she said, her tone dry, now they're the ones choking on the silence. I hung up, left the cart where it was, and walked out of the store. I didn't need waffles anymore. I needed air. By the time I got home, the news had hit the local business blog. A small headline, but loud enough. Torres and Sons merger stalled amid financial audit. Sources suggest internal conflict. There was a photo of my father at a groundbreaking event, smiling for the camera. I wondered if he'd smiled like that when he signed the letter cutting me off. If he imagined me crying on the other side of it, folding under the weight of rejection. Instead, I folded him and everything he built into a box and tossed it out the door. Later that night, a black SUV parked outside my condo. I watched it from the second-story window. Nathan got out. Same pressed shirt, same overly groomed beard, same permanent entitlement stitched into his shoulders. He buzzed the intercom. I didn't answer. He tried again. Then he stood there, arms crossed, eyes darting around like a man who finally realized the foundation under his feet was made of paper. I opened the door eventually, not for him but because I wanted to see the expression on his face up close. Wow, I said, stepping into the hallway. You didn't bring the letterhead this time? He looked tired. Really tired. Like he hadn't slept in days. But I didn't care. I'd lost sleep for years while he floated on clouds built from my quiet sacrifices. I need to talk to you, he said. Of course you do, I replied. Now that your accounts are frozen and your client meetings are cancelled, I must seem really valuable. Amelia, please, he sighed. This is bigger than you and Dad fighting. Oh, honey, I said with a laugh. This was never about fighting. Fighting implies two people with equal ground. Your side cut me off. My side just finally decided not to pay the utilities anymore. He ran a hand through his hair. You've made your point, okay? Loud and clear. You're pissed. I get it. No, I said sharply, stepping closer. You don't. You don't get what it feels like to be used, sidelined, then discarded like a bad draft. You've always had Dad's approval. You've always been in the room. I've spent my entire life knocking on locked doors, and now that you finally need what's in my hands, you're standing at my door like I owe you something. I don't expect you to fix it, he muttered, his eyes dropping. Just help us pause the audit. Give us time. Time to do what? I snapped. Clean up the books. Move the shell companies around. Get your signatures off the fake invoices before the IRS connects the dots. He looked up, startled. I tilted my head. Did you think I didn't read everything? I was your ghost for years, Nathan. The one cleaning up the QuickBooks file while you hosted client lunches. The one adjusting your monthly statements so Dad wouldn't see how many thousands you spent on marketing consultants that just happened to be blonde. His face turned pale. I've got backups, I said, folding my arms. Everything. Emails. Transaction logs. Even the fake contractor license you used to get that Arizona deal approved. Nathan staggered back like I had slapped him. You wouldn't, he whispered. I smiled. You tried to take my name off the company like it was gum on your shoe. You had a chance to stop this and you stayed silent. So no, I'm not helping. And if you or anyone in that crumbling little empire tries to threaten me or discredit me, I will press the nuclear button. He didn't respond. Just nodded slowly, then turned and walked back to the SUV. I stood in the doorway long after he drove off. The air felt different. Like the air after a storm, where everything is still but humming with leftover energy. The next morning, I received an email from Interstate Development's legal department requesting a deposition. I didn't hesitate. I said yes. I sat in a corporate boardroom 2 days later, in a blazer I wore when I first pitched financial plans to Fortune 500 clients. The lawyers were polite, careful. But I could see the real questions beneath the scripted ones. They weren't just building a case. They were building a wall, one that excluded Torres and Sons from their future deals. By the end of the hour, I'd handed over 3 flash drives of documentation and a signed affidavit. The room was silent when I left. I walked outside into the sun and felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid. Power. Not borrowed, not begged for. Owned. That evening my mother called. I let it ring. Then rang again. And again. Finally I picked up. "Amelia," she said quickly, "I know what's going on now." "I didn't. Your father didn't tell me the whole truth." "That's new," I said flatly. "I just want the family back together," she said, her voice trembling. "Can't we just sit and talk?" "Did you say that when you read the letter?" I asked. "Did you tell him to reconsider? Or did you set out the reunion chairs and pretend I never existed?" Silence. "Right," I said. "Tell Dad he can send another letter. I won't even need to text back this time." Before she could respond, I hung up. My phone rang again 30 minutes later. Not Mom. Not Nathan. Not even Dad. Uncle Luis. I let it go to voicemail. But this time I listened. "They've called a meeting, Amelia. Emergency board meeting. They're talking about dissolving the company if the audit gets worse. Your father's blaming everyone but himself. He's unraveling. You need to know that what you did, what you're doing, is working." I exhaled slowly. It wasn't joy I felt. It wasn't even revenge. It was balance. For years they'd weighed me down with silence, exclusion, fake affection. Now they were getting their return on investment. I poured myself a drink, sat on the balcony and watched the city move beneath me. Their world was collapsing. Mine was just beginning to feel solid. By the time the board meeting happened, word had spread far beyond the walls of that outdated conference room. It wasn't just whispers among contractors or accountants anymore. It was vendors withdrawing mid-project, clients issuing breach of contract letters, and former employees coming forward with stories they had buried out of loyalty or fear. The empire my father had built on concrete, reputation, and control was beginning to crumble like old plaster. And I didn't have to lift a finger. I didn't show up to the meeting. I wasn't invited, of course. But Luis sent me updates, each one more surreal than the last. The final one read, "They just voted to suspend all operations." Nathan walked out halfway through. "Your father didn't say a word." I read the message twice, sitting alone at the sushi bar down the street. The chef in front of me carefully torched a scallop, and the flame was the only thing that felt real for a second. I thought I'd feel victorious, or at least smug. Instead I felt a strange, hollow quiet. This was the man who once looked me in the eye at 13 and told me, "You're smart, Amelia. But Nathan's got the guts for leadership." This was the father who let me bankroll his failing company, who sent me a letter to exile me like I was nothing, then begged me silently when I finally stepped back. And now he had nothing left to hold on to. I got the call that night, unexpected, from a blocked number. I let it ring to voicemail. But then it came again. And again. By the third time I picked up, there was silence at first. I could hear the faint sound of wind, maybe from an open window. Then came his voice, quiet, gravel thick. "It's me." I didn't speak. "I know I don't deserve your time," he said. "But I'm asking for it." So I said nothing. Not out of spite, because I wanted to hear where he'd take this, unprompted. "I was wrong," he said finally. "All of it. The letter, the way we treated you. I let ego make decisions that should have been about family. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to hear me out. You sent me a letter," I said, voice low, steady. "You didn't even pick up the phone." "I thought I was protecting the deal," he said. "I thought if I kept things clean, the merger would go through and I could make it right afterward. I didn't expect it to unravel this fast. So, you were going to cut me out, profit from my credit, and maybe throw me a bone later, after you cashed out." He didn't respond. Silence was confirmation enough. "You always treated me like a backup generator," I said. "Only useful when things go dark." "I know," he said. "I see it now. The worst part is Nathan. He wasn't ready. I thought I could hand it to him and step back. But he couldn't hold it. And now I don't know if there's anything left. A part of me wanted to say good. Another part wanted to cry. But I didn't do either. I took a breath. Do you know what the difference is between you and me, Dad? He was quiet. I know how to start over. I ended the call. The next morning I woke up to flowers on my doorstep. White lilies. My mother's favorite. No note, just a small envelope with my name printed on the front in my father's handwriting. Inside was a copy of the original loan agreement. My signature, his, and a line drawn through the clause that allowed him to claim unilateral authority in a sale. He had voided it. Handwritten, initialed, dated. It wouldn't undo what had been done. But it was something. I sent a picture of it to Lisa. 5 minutes later she replied, "This puts you in a position to claim partial assets if the company is liquidated. And damages if the bank pursues fraud." Another message followed. "You want to go all the way?" I stared at my phone for a long time. Did I? There was a version of me, hell, the older version of me, that would have said no. That would have said, it's family. Let it go. That version spent decades trying to make them love her enough to stay. But that version also co-signed a $1.5 million loan out of guilt and got a breakup letter in return. So I replied, yes. I want every dollar they tried to steal from me. Lisa got to work. She filed a petition for asset protection while we negotiated a settlement with the bank. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about control. And I wasn't going to let them rewrite the story now that the pages were burning. That weekend, the Torres family reunion finally happened. Photos showed up on social media. Awkward smiles, fewer people than usual, Nathan looking like he hadn't slept in a week. My seat was, of course, empty. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 5 years tagged me in a group photo with a caption that read, "We miss you, Mel. It's not the same without you." I didn't respond. But I looked at the picture for a long time. I remembered what it was like to be 10 years old, sitting at the kids' table while Nathan stood up with a plastic microphone and gave a speech about, one day running the family business. Everyone clapped. My dad beamed like he was seeing the future. Nobody asked if I had anything to say. Well, they were listening now. A week later, the lawyer from Interstate Development called again. They had officially pulled out of the merger. Publicly. In a statement that cited irregularities and internal instability. My father's company didn't just lose its biggest deal. It lost its credibility. That same day, I got a notice. The bank was seizing 2 of the company's trucks and placing liens on their office building. They were bleeding from every corner. Nathan sent me a message that night. Just one line. "You got what you wanted. Hope it was worth it." I didn't reply. I simply forwarded it to Lisa. She responded with, "Keep that. Just in case." And still part of me wondered, was it worth it? All the unraveling, the burned bridges, the silence I chose over resolution? Yes, it was. Because sometimes revenge doesn't look like fire and fury. Sometimes it looks like peace, quiet, earned, impenetrable peace. And sometimes, the sweetest revenge is not shouting at the people who once silenced you. It's showing them how loud your absence can be. A few days later, I stood in front of my old family home in San Marcos. The house where I spent summer nights building Lego skyscrapers while Nathan got a tool set and a handshake from Dad. The house where I cried in the bathroom at 14 when my application for a science camp got ignored while Nathan was flown out to an engineering internship. I wasn't there to say goodbye. I was there to walk away from it one last time, with nothing owed and nothing held. I didn't knock on the door. I didn't want to see their faces. I just stood across the street and watched as a repo truck pulled into the driveway. My father came out, hands in his pockets, hair more gray than I remembered. He didn't see me. But I saw him. And in that moment I realized he finally knew. He knew what it felt like to be on the outside looking in. And for once it wasn't me. The lawsuit landed in their mailbox on a Monday. Louis sent me a photo of the envelope, half-torn, sitting on my father's kitchen table. The expression on my dad's face, frozen in the background like a man who'd just opened a letter from karma itself, was all the closure I thought I'd ever need. But what surprised me more was what Louis said in the caption. He's not fighting it. Not fighting it. After all the ego, all the cold silences, all the years of him steamrolling every room he entered, my father, David Torres, wasn't putting up a defense. Maybe because he knew there wasn't one. Maybe because he was too tired. Or maybe, deep down, he knew that trying to fight the daughter he tried so hard to silence would only give me more ground to stand on. I didn't need his apology anymore. I had receipts, contracts, evidence. 40. I had everything he tried to keep for himself. And the thing that really burned? I never raised my voice. I never begged for understanding. I let their actions collapse under their own weight. Let me be clear, I wasn't after vengeance for the sake of blood. I didn't want to see my father in an orange jumpsuit or my brother in a cardboard box. I didn't even want the damn company anymore. All I wanted was for the truth to be louder than the story they used to tell about me. The one where I was difficult, dramatic, too independent. The one where I was never enough. When the court hearing was scheduled, I didn't flinch. I wore black. Not out of grief, but because I knew what it meant to mourn a version of myself that no longer existed. The girl who'd once asked her father to read a draft of her college application essay and got told, "Let Nathan look it over, he's better with words." That girl was dead. The woman who stood in front of a judge, presenting every transaction, every signature, every legal maneuver they'd made to push me out, she had risen in her place. Lisa walked me through everything, calm and surgical. The bank had already begun the foreclosure process on the company's properties. My role as co-signer turned whistleblower gave me more leverage than I even wanted. And when the judge asked me why I brought the case forward, I didn't hold back. I wasn't just pushed out of a business, I said. I was manipulated into supporting it, then cut off when I was no longer convenient. They didn't just want me gone, they wanted me erased. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here to make sure no one gets to rewrite history and cash out at my expense. I looked over at my father sitting in his chair, eyes heavy, skin pale. Nathan sat beside him, jaw clenched, probably calculating how long it would take for word to spread in his networking circles that the legacy he bragged about was a smoldering wreck. They didn't say a word. They didn't have anything left to say. The judge ruled in my favor. 51% of the remaining company assets were awarded to me in restitution, pending full liquidation. A final act of poetic irony, really. I now own more of the company than either of them ever let me touch. I could sell it, shred it, burn it to the ground, or let it rot in storage, a permanent reminder that their control had a price, and they had already paid it in full. The day after the ruling, I got a call from a reporter. Local business beat. She'd heard about the court case and wanted a quote. I told her the truth. They underestimated the quiet one. They thought I'd go away quietly. But quiet isn't the same as powerless. The story ran with a photo of me outside the courthouse. I wasn't smiling and I didn't need to be. The headline read, "From disowned to dominant. How one woman took back the family business that tried to bury her." I didn't even know the article had gone viral until my inbox was full of emails from strangers. Other daughters, other black sheep, other women who had been told to stay small so someone else could shine. Some thanked me. Some shared their own stories. One woman wrote, "I read your story out loud to my father over dinner. He couldn't finish his steak." I laughed so hard I cried. Not because I enjoyed their discomfort, but because for once I wasn't the one at the table choking something down in silence. Weeks passed. My father didn't call. Nathan tried once. Left a voice message that started with, "I guess congratulations are in order," and ended with a half-hearted, "Maybe we can still find a way to talk." I deleted it. The house I'd grown up in was eventually put up for sale. Luis texted me a photo of the "For Sale by Owner" sign going up on the front lawn. A reminder that some things, no matter how big or loud or cemented in place they once seemed, can still be dismantled brick by brick. They'd said I didn't align with the family's values. They were right. Because their values were built on silence, control, and selective love. Mine were built on justice, boundaries, accountability. You can't build legacy on the backs of the people you betray and expect it to stand forever. One day I drove back to that old office building, the Torres and Sons construction headquarters. It was dark, windows dusty, like it had been closed for months, not weeks. I parked across the street and just watched. So many weekends had been lost inside those walls. So many reports I rewrote, so many favors I granted. So many times I waited for them to treat me like more than an extra seat at the table. Now the table was gone. I walked up to the glass and peered inside. There on the front desk still sat the framed photo of our family. Me, younger, maybe 21, awkwardly posed next to Nathan and my dad, who held the company plaque like it was a holy relic. They never asked me to sign that plaque. They never made space for my name. But now they couldn't tell the story without me. I took a photo of that picture through the glass and walked away. I didn't take the building. I didn't press criminal charges. I didn't show up to gloat. Because power doesn't always mean doing more. Sometimes it means knowing when to stop. I moved to Santa Fe a month later. Sold my share of the company to a small real estate developer who planned to turn the office into co-working space. They asked if I wanted to keep the name on the deed. I told them no. Let that name rot with the old version of me. I started my own firm, smaller, leaner, mine. Just mine. No legacy to protect. No family ghosts in the margins. Clients came not because of who my father was, but because of what I had proven. Every now and then I get a letter in the mail with no return address. Just a handwritten card. They're from my mother. I know the penmanship. The last one said, "He still sets a place at the table. He doesn't say your name, but he always looks at the door." I didn't cry. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Because some doors once closed should never be opened again. And some daughters don't just survive being cut out. They build a new house entirely. And this time the table inside has my name carved into the wood. If you've ever been underestimated, betrayed, or pushed aside by the people who were supposed to stand beside you, share this story. Let them see what happens when the quiet one finally takes the mic. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful betrayal and revenge stories where justice always finds its voice.